The rain came down in sheets that night, turning the highway into a ribbon of black glass under the flickering streetlights. Marcus Chen gripped the steering wheel of his aging Honda, his knuckles white, his heart hammering against his ribs. In the back seat, his 6-year-old daughter Emma slept fitfully, her small chest rising and falling with labored breaths. The fever had spiked an hour ago, and now Marcus was racing against time itself, pushing through the storm toward the hospital 15 miles away. He had no insurance, no savings left after the medical bills from his wife's battle with cancer 2 years ago, a battle she had lost. Tonight, he had nothing but desperation and a father's love driving him forward through the darkness. Then he saw her, a figure on the side of the road, barely visible through the downpour. A police cruiser sat at an awkward angle, its front end buried in the muddy shoulder. A female officer stood beside it, drenched to the bone, her hand raised in a futile attempt to flag down passing cars. Most vehicles flew past without slowing, their drivers too consumed by their own urgency or too wary to stop on a night like this. Marcus felt his foot hover over the gas pedal. Every second counted. Emma needed him. But something in the way the officer stood there, alone and stranded in the storm, pulled at something deep inside him, something his late wife had always said made him special. She used to tell him that his kindness would either save him or break him one day. Marcus pulled over. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the moments that change everything, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. Now, let's continue. He stepped out into the rain, instantly soaked, and jogged toward the officer. As he got closer, he could see she was young, maybe late 20s, her uniform clinging to her frame, her face obscured by the rain streaming down from her cap. She looked up as he approached, relief flooding her features. Marcus called out over the roar of the storm, asking if she was okay, if she needed help. She nodded, explaining that her cruiser had hydroplaned and she had been trying to call for backup, but her radio was dead and her phone had no signal out here. She had been stranded for nearly 30 minutes. Marcus glanced back at his car, where Emma lay sleeping. The hospital, the fever. Time was slipping away, but he looked at the officer again, saw the exhaustion in her posture, the way her hands trembled slightly, and he made his decision. He told her he could give her a ride to the next town where she could get help. She hesitated, clearly trained to be cautious, but the desperation in both their situations created an unspoken understanding. She accepted. As she climbed into the passenger seat, shaking off the rain, Marcus caught his first clear look at her face under the interior light, and he froze, his breath caught in his throat. His hands went numb on the steering wheel. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But there was no mistaking those eyes, that small scar above her left eyebrow, the shape of her face that he had seen every single day for the first 18 years of his life. The officer looked at him strangely, asking if he was all right. Marcus couldn't speak. His mind was reeling backward through time, through 15 years of silence and unanswered questions. This was his sister, his younger sister, Sarah, who had run away from their abusive foster home when she was 16 and he was 20. He had searched for her for years, filed missing person reports, hired a private investigator he couldn't afford, driven through countless cities calling her name. Eventually the trail had gone cold, and life had pulled him in other directions. Marriage, fatherhood, grief, survival. But he had never stopped wondering, never stopped hoping. And now here. She was, sitting in his car, wearing a police uniform, alive and whole and completely unaware of who he was. Sarah. He whispered her name like a prayer. She stiffened, her hand instinctively moving toward her weapon. How did he know her name? Her eyes narrowed, studying his face with the trained suspicion of a law enforcement officer. And then, slowly, recognition began to dawn. Her expression shifted from wariness to confusion to disbelief. She whispered his name back. Marcus. The word came out broken, barely audible over the rain drumming on the roof. Tears began streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater still dripping from her hair. What followed was a collision of 15 years of separation, of words that tumbled out in a rush, overlapping and incomplete. She told him how she had been terrified after running away, how she had lived on the streets for months before a police officer had found her and helped her get into a program for at-risk youth. That officer had changed her life, had shown her that she could be more than her past. and Sarah had spent the last decade working to become like her, to help others the way she had been helped. She had tried to find Marcus too, but their foster records were sealed, and by the time she had the resources to search properly, she didn't even know where to start. She had assumed he had moved on, built a life, maybe forgotten about the scared little girl who had disappeared into the night. Marcus told her everything, about their mother's death when they were children, about the foster system that had broken them, about his own struggles after she left, about meeting his wife, about losing her to cancer, about Emma. At the mention of his daughter, Sarah turned to look at the sleeping child in the back seat, and something shifted in her expression. Marcus explained where they were headed, why he had been driving so fast, why every minute mattered. Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed the radio from her belt, the one that had supposedly been dead. She clicked it on, and static crackled to life. It had been working after all. She called for an ambulance, giving their location, explaining the situation with an authority that Marcus found both strange and comforting coming from the little sister he once protected. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, and Sarah rode with them to the hospital, refusing to leave Marcus's side. Emma's fever was brought under control, an infection treated, and by dawn, she was sleeping peacefully in a hospital bed, her small hand wrapped around Marcus's finger. Sarah sat on the other side of the bed, her uniform now dry, her eyes red from crying and exhaustion and overwhelming gratitude. In the quiet of that hospital room, as the first light of morning crept through the windows, Marcus realized what his wife had meant all those years ago. His kindness hadn't broken him, it had saved him. It had brought his sister back from the void, had reunited a family that had been shattered by circumstance and pain. One decision to pull over in a storm had changed everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that miracles can happen in the darkest moments, please like this video, share it with your loved ones, and let us know in the comments how this made you feel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who need them most. Also, please type family first in the comments if you believe that some bonds can never truly be broken. Sarah reached across the bed and took Marcus's free hand. She told him she wasn't going anywhere ever again. They had lost 15 years, but they had the rest of their lives to rebuild what had been taken from them. Emma stirred in her sleep, and in that moment Marcus understood that sometimes the detours in life, the moments when we choose compassion over convenience, are exactly what lead us home. The rain had stopped, the storm had passed, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus, Chen, wasn't alone anymore. Neither was Sarah. They were family again, found in the most impossible of circumstances, saved by a single act of kindness on a rain-soaked highway in the middle of nowhere. Some reunions are written in the stars. Others are written in the choices we make when no one is watching.